You gotta put on my face, Lizzie.
Yeah.
Q-tips in your ears.
I call this village council meeting for March 12th, 2020. If everyone will stand for invocation and the pledge of allegiance, please.
Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for all the privileges there are being in the body of Christ. Lord, thank you for the village of Bethel. Thank you for our mayor, our councilmen. Lord, we pray that we be about the business of this community, to better this community. I pray unity for this community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you everybody for coming. We'll move right into it with a roll call this time. So,
Ms. Shepherd?
Here?
Ms. Hallfield?
Here.
Ms. Ross?
Here.
Mr. Dunn? Here. Ms. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Coogan?
Here.
Mayor Noble?
Here. All right, thank you. Approval of minutes. I have the minutes here for February 13th, 2020. I hope everyone has had a chance to review those. Is there any amendments or changes of those? If not, I look for a motion to approve those as read.
I move we approve the minutes of February the 13th, 2020 as written.
I'll second that.
All right, Ms. Shepherd and Ms. Hollifield and Mr. Gilpin, when you're ready.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And communications.
We have none?
All right, thank you. And we have any public input this evening from anyone? All right, Mr. Shoulder,
I think so.
just state your name and...
I'm Greg Schuler. Just wanted to touch on a couple of things here real quick. I know you're going to point to the local board of tax review today. Was one of the issues coming up. And along with that, the statute states then that the tax administrator, which is in this case Rita, is required to give a notice to the taxpayer in writing at the same time that they can appeal any penalties or fines, any assessments, or if a refund is denied. So I just wanted to put that on record, and that is part of the statute, as I understand. Then that the tax administrator will notify the taxpayer that they can appeal any assessments. Okay. Second thing, everybody's probably seen the mailboxes fill up with negative political ads. Most of that is coming from big money PACs in Columbus. They are trying to unseat or beat the locally endorsed candidates for their own reasoning. To name a couple, Alan Freeman is being supported by Columbus against the locally endorsed Adam Byrd. Terry Johnson is being backed by big money in Columbus against locally endorsed Dave Ubel for state senator. Alan Freeman is running against Adam Byrd for the 66th district, which is our state representative. So that's a really important one for the people in the village to know about. And also, they're backing John Becker against Bonnie Batchelor for county commissioner. So Bonnie's been endorsed by the Claremont County Republican Party as well. And also, our friend Chris Hicks is running against Dave Painter. He's still on his path of destruction at the county level and at the local levels here, so people need to be aware of that. But he is running against Dave Painter. He's, you might have heard of the Coffee Gate. He's had Dave Painter cited over giving somebody a cup of coffee, so that's how ridiculous this has become. And so people need to be aware that Chris Hicks is no friend of the people. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else want to speak? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we'll move on to our administration and committee reports. And for me, I have Mayor's Court report for the month of February 2020. I had a total revenue of $9,573.65, with $7,525.65 going to the village, and $1,946.50 to the state, and $101.50 to the county. And then just to remind everybody, the yard sale dates that we had assigned last meeting, I'll just review those again real quick. May 15th through the 17th, July 17th through the 19th, and then September 18th through the 20th. And then I do want to refer back to the selection of members for the local Board of Tax Review for us. I guess we could do that now, or do we want to wait to appoint those members?
Do you have the people that?
I have mine, and I have a good feeling that there's a couple
So
for
we can
council to
either-
choose from.
We
so.
can discuss an executive session.
Okay.
Or if you feel that there's a slate ready to go, you can do that now. It's up to you. It's up to council.
Okay, because I need one, and
We
then,
might want to do an executive session to avoid just debating on people in public.
okay, so can we move that to the end of this meeting then, is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll table it until the end of the meeting for an executive session. I also wanted to let everybody know that the town hall meeting for tonight has been canceled. I guess everyone's kind of got that idea. You know, we don't have any control on how many people show up, and if there's more than 100, then we don't want to be in violation of the state. And then I was hosting the Mayor's Association meeting on Saturday, so that was canceled as well, because we don't want to bring in people from all over the county into this room. So, that's pretty much all I have. So, next up would be the village administrator, Travis Dawson.
I did attend the Ohio City Managers Association Conference last week. A lot of good topics discussed. Amazingly, coronavirus wasn't discussed much, but a week ago was a lifetime ago with that, so a lot has changed since then. It was briefly touched on because the International City Managers Association is going to be held in Toronto this fall, so it was just mentioned that they would continue to monitor the situation. But I did have a good session on nuisance abatement, which I will be talking with our solicitor on possible avenues to use towards dealing with some of our chronic nuisance abatements. There's always a good session on social media. Had a good session on managing crisis and crisis communication, so it's always a worthwhile conference. We do have a Duke planned outage coming for the Bethel substation that is on the east half of the village of Bethel. As you are aware, when we have storms, a lot of times your power will kick out for 5-6 seconds and then kick back on. Those are called reclosers. Those have a lifetime, and the ones that are on the substation are due to be replaced, so it will prevent outages during storms, but this will be probably an 8-hour outage to repair or to replace those reclosers. We're currently looking at starting that. Duke is going to do that starting potentially, this isn't confirmed, but we're hoping to do April 17th at midnight. That's a Friday night at midnight. That will give us time to put a flyer in with the next utility bill notifying customers that that's going to happen. It will be only the eastern half of the village, so basically east of Main Street. So it won't really affect as many of the restaurants as we originally were concerned about, so that's a good thing, but it's still, I think, best to do it on a Friday night. That way it won't affect the churches on a Sunday morning if it goes long. It won't affect people getting up and going to work during the week. So that's what we're shooting for. Duke is going to confirm that will work with them. But that's the plan for now. We'll communicate that on Facebook and then put a flyer in with the utility bill. Any questions on that, or think that a better time would be?
Is everyone still physically getting a paper bill or
Not everyone, no.
Just so the people that-
People who have signed up for online.
the online, they won't, but they'll get an email or something? to
Yeah,
that
I will
effect?
confirm that they will, yes.
Okay.
Can we also do Facebook?
Yes, we'll do Facebook as well.
And how long is the outage?
We're expecting 8 hours.
And I've already talked to the chief to up the coverage for that, so.
Yeah, we already spoke to the fire department. I sent them notification today of it, and we are upping to 3 officers for that night to just assist in trouble calls, nuisance calls, alarm drops, things like that nature.
So once I get the date set, I'll confirm that.
Yep. Everything's just tentative right now.
Northeast Street, stormwater project and road construction project. We'll be having the pre-construction meeting coming up here in the next week or two, so that's good. There'll be a little bit of a delay to get that project rolling. There is a Duke gas line that has to be moved, so they are going to have to come in and do that before we can do a good portion of our project, but that's going to be discussed, and Duke will be present at that pre-construction meeting, so we'll try to work around that as best we can. The nonprofit community grant, I think was either in this week's Claremont Sun, or it's going to be in next week's Claremont Sun. And then the last thing we have, residential solar. We have a customer who is going to be installing solar. The person who purchased the Pay Lake is looking into residential solar. So we'll be coordinating that with our linemen to make sure that we have the right hardware in place. We'll also have to look at changing the way our electric rate is calculated. Not that it'll be an increase, but it'll break out the energy portion from the transmission and capacity portion, so that that is fairly dealt with in the solar process. So we'll be looking at that with finance over the next couple of months. And I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you. And next up will be our fiscal officer, Mr. Gilpin.
Thank you. Last month, I reported that we were still working on the annual financial report and some questions going back and forth about that component unit, they called it. So I wanted to report that we did get the final word from local government services on how they wanted us to present that, so that's been taken care of. Their annual financial report was submitted probably about 2 weeks prior to the deadline, so we are back to normal with all those procedures. And then normally would be reporting that I would be attending the local government conference the first week of April, but we got notice today that that's been canceled. They are hoping, and it's mandatory for me to go to that for my continuing education requirements, so they are going to reschedule it for some point in the future, but nobody knows when that is yet, so anybody was planning on going to that, we can put that on hold. And then lastly, we have ordinance 1934, I believe, for later this evening, which is the permanent appropriations. And Finance talked about those last week, and then again briefly today, a quick meeting prior to council. And the only change from last week to today was some added figures to accommodate another possible piece of legislation that's for consideration later in the meeting. And the question, and that one deals with a severance package for employees should the unfortunate scenario of a village dissolution occur. So the question came up in the finance meeting, what would be the cost for that? So in between that quick meeting and council, I went in the other room, made those calculations. So here they are. In the general fund, it would cost $9,310. Out of the street fund would be $24,500. The police department fund would be $125,000. Water fund would be $55,600. The electric fund would be $51,200 for a total cost of $265,610 would be the implications if that were to take place. So, and that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. And next up would be our solicitor, Ms. Supinger.
Just a couple things to update on. The last council meeting, we had talked with the chief about implementing a program with Grant to do shadowing. I have made contact with the Grant, and they are in the process of getting an agreement from their insurance carrier, which as soon as they get it, they'll share it with me, and we'll take a look at it and continue to work on developing an agreement between the parties. The other just brief update is we have sent out an additional round of letters with respect to the utility relocation project. We're reaching out again to some of the folks that we haven't been able to reach an agreement with. Michelle Reed in my office made a little bit more specific cover letters to each property owner to explain the specific implications and the ask. So hopefully that resolves any kind of confusion that was out there or what exactly the project is. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Just to touch on that, we did, another thing we talked about last week at the conference, drone technology, and there is a way for, we can get a company to come in and do it's called a point mapping system, where they can render a 3D rendering of what Plain Street would look like without all the wires in place. It'd be photorealistic. So that's something that I'm going to be talking to them about on cost, to see, if that would be a viable way to show, the people who were having trouble getting these easements, that might help them to see what benefit it's going to be to the community. So.
Okay, great. Next up will be our Chief of Police, Chief Teague.
Month of February, we drove 2,358 miles. We made 118 traffic stops. 21 of those were in the school zone. 35 citations for speed, 5 for driving under suspension, 17 miscellaneous violations, 2 OVIs, and 38 warnings. We answered 389 calls, took 19 offense reports, and 27 incident reports. Just a quick talk on one of those, or actually on 2 of them, on the same night was shots fired. Both of those turned out to be nothing. We spoke about those in safety. Motor vehicle accidents, we took 7. 6 were non-injury, 1 was with injury. Took 6 disorders, 4 domestic disputes, followed up on 6 investigations. Suspicious person / vehicle 21 times, 4 thefts, 6 B&E alarms, 1 B&E in progress. Robbery holdup in progress, we had 1. It was unsubstantiated. Person with a weapon was 1. Stabbing gunshot trauma was 1 that we spoke about earlier that turned out to be a bee sting. 87 miscellaneous calls, 3 abandoned vehicles. Assisted other agencies only twice in the month. We had 3 fire runs, 53 EMS runs, and 5 911 open lines. Myself and Mr. Coogan met with the fire chief the other day and with the Legion, referenced the upcoming the upcoming fireworks and concert in the park. We've got a plan in place for where the alcohol limits are going to be for the sale inside the park. And then the fire chief and I spoke with the gentleman from the fireworks concession, and we were talking about relocating where the proposed location of where the fireworks are going to set off. And right now it looks like it'll be somewhere in the area of Ball Diamond number 2, possibly if the wind change and things between Diamond 2 and 3. There's some considerations for retirement homes. We have to be so many feet, and schools and things like that, but that seems to be the best location also for viewing in the park. And then the biggest one, the last couple of days, we've been kind of inundated like everyone else with the coronavirus. I put a couple of action plans together for the police department. We've issued some additional PPE. I've had quite a few meetings with the fire department to talk about our response and assistance for them, and likewise assistance from them to us, and how to protect both agencies. I'm sure we'll probably talk about that a little bit later on. I've got some points and things. We've put some notices in the bathrooms, all downstairs, just general hand washing, cleanliness things from the CDC that were sent out. We've got those posted. And I think that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Next up is our Safety Committee Chair, Mr. Coogan.
Met on the 2nd of March at 6:30 here in council chambers, and we discussed a myriad of
topics that the chief gave me, 25 to be exact, plus a couple additionals that were thrown in. The first of which being, and most important, being the possible purchase of the old EMS building at 146 Northeast Street, and possible renovation of this building on top of it. We ended up referring it over to finance after taking a review and looking at the building and looking at other options that we had at our disposal. We can't afford a $1.5 million addition to the community center, so we're looking for a cheaper option at this point. And that's why we referred it over to finance, so they can crunch numbers and get back to the taxpayers and let them know what's going on with that. We came up roughly with maybe over a 15 to 20 year period, that way we can keep it within the village's budget and try to make it as less painstaking as possible on the taxpayers. I look at it as a safety factor primarily. I don't want felons or possible felons brought into this building and possibly hurting one of our employees for the village, or tripping over something and hurting themselves. Having them in a freestanding building would actually keep that problem away. That's why I'm referring that over to finance. Anyways, he also discussed the status of 2020 Silverado. It works and it has some quirks. Status of the surplus unit 113, 2013 Ford Explorer. Emily was supposed to have a resolution for council to approve.
I sent those over
Yeah.
several weeks ago.
I don't think that one made it on.
Anyways, it's something we have to look into here. And that was for equipment over 1,000 for possibly passing an annual sale type thing for surplus items from council. You've already discussed the Grant LE, U.S. Grant LE program. BBA is requesting some assistance and to reward students wearing seat belts in the April timeframe. Officer Ginn had his surgery. It was successful. His rhinoplasty went well. He's expected to be off 1 to 3 weeks. The Gator has some donated labor. Is looking good, and they're looking at getting city plates for this and having it up and functional for the event in May. They're doing the drug take-back program at the Bethel Tate Fire Department on April 25th. Okay, and what hours were that?
10 to 2.
Pardon?
10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay.
And also, we take liquids that day, too.
Okay. And they were looking for information from the local businesses for after-hour contact numbers, and so far they're getting a really good response on that. They're looking for a status on the Facebook page, waiting for a resolution to be drafted on police input on this said page. And let's see here. 2011. They conducted 10 DUIs so far this year. They're on the pace to quadruple last year's pace, and most of which were narcotics based. Correct, Chief?
Correct.
Okay. Updated property room evidence collection with heat sealer and specimen cups per Ohio. It was purchased recently, and that's per the Attorney General's input. And they denied a peddler's permit to a Mr. Jeffries for various charges that he had previously. And they're looking for rifle plates and accessories. They're all starting to arrive, and that's for your vehicle, correct?
Well, that's for the personal protective equipment that we talked about before, the 75% grant.
Okay.
All of the equipment has arrived with the exception of the actual plates themselves.
Okay. And we discussed the coronavirus a little bit, because we really had minimal input at that point in time. And also all the training that the officers have been going through for the month, and what they need to sharpen up on. The chief was talking about going to OPATA,
Correct.
OPTA, Performance Leadership Training in Richfield, Ohio. And we did the fireworks inspection as he stated earlier. And actually that was a better spot for the fireworks for our patrons to see. The original site was more down towards Frisch's.
More right behind
and,
Skyline.
yeah, the school would have pretty much obscured the vision from the park. So we felt it was probably in the best interest of everybody to have that as a site. He was also addressing an ordinance 2019/05 nuisance properties.
From the Richmond.
Yeah. We're going to research that and going to bring it to the next meeting. And ODOT project is coming soon, construction. The
Restriping program.
restriping program with the sidewalk program down by Grant High School. And finally, camera project for Smart City. We were talking about possibly setting up a camera system to where we can actually keep an eagle's eye on the park, or you know, one of the places around here that needs to be watched regularly, where you have regular drug activities and whatnot. So anyways, we decided we're going to have our next meeting on the 6th of April at 6:30.
Thank you. All right, next up would be Finance Committee Chair, Ms. Shepherd.
We met on March the 3rd of 2020 in council chambers. Bill went over some of our pluses and our funding. The local government distribution was up about 4%, and it's possibly due to some of the 9% increase we're getting from the state for the street funding. The revenue for citations is up. All I can say about that is you people need to slow down a little bit in their school zones. We also discussed the permanent appropriations, hoping to make those permanent at this council meeting. So we're going to recommend to council to adopt those permanent appropriations. We also talked about what safety brought forward to us about new quarters for the police department. And I will remind the finance members that we're to have a walkthrough at 5 o'clock before the next council, or I'm sorry, the next, is it council meeting or finance meeting?
Finance.
Finance, okay. I didn't write that down. Which will be on April the 7th at 5:30. And I believe we're going to start at the other building first and then come to chambers for that walkthrough. Or come to this building. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And we did have occasion we had more items that we had to look at, so we did have another meeting this evening because Mr. Goodwin was required to change the permanent appropriations. So we discussed that and voted to bring that forward to council to be looked at this evening, and that's going to be ordinance, I believe it's 1934. Yes. So we'll be looking to approve that later on. And that's all I have.
All right, well, thank you. All right, and next up is Parks and Village Properties, Mr. Dillon.
We met on the 2nd of March and discussed final arrangements for the concert series. Mr. Terry Adams was here from the American Legion discussing liquor permits and boundaries and so on and so forth. Worked through a couple issues of that. They met, as the chief mentioned, went over the new location for the fireworks shoot-off, if you will. Discussed, the Legion has acquired some more flags for veterans that we're working on getting either a rotation for those, maybe identifying some other places that we can put them up in addition to where we already have flags in place. Let's see, what else was there? We discussed briefly possible arrangements for location of a new restroom facility in the park, looking at the options that we have for us there, and set our next meeting for April 6th at 5:30. Don't think I missed anything.
All right, thank you. And next up is Burke Trust, Ms. Ross.
We have not met since our last meeting, which was our last council meeting. However, the commission met and did approve all of the requests that council approved and sent to them to be okay, to be approved. So that was good. So everything that we have in the works has been approved and is going to go. And then I assume we won't have a need for a meeting until the community grants are come through, or is that after scholarships?
Those will both be around the same time, probably scholarships first,
Okay,
and then we're still gonna try to have a joint meeting.
with the bank,
Yes.
that is correct. So as of right now, we do not have a meeting scheduled. We will schedule it once all that comes together.
All right. Is that it, Ms. Ross?
That is it.
All right, thank you.
Skip those.
Yeah, those got tabled. And then now we are to Personnel Committee, Ms. Brown.
We met March 3rd at 6:30 PM, and we had to discuss some issues that arise, not because of anything we've done as a community, but because Mr. Hicks and some others would like to have us dissolved as a community, or at least voted on to dissolve, even though that costs money every time you put it on a ballot and takes away from what your community can benefit from. So we had to think of what the village needed, and the village needs to be able to function. It needs to have police, it needs to have full-time employees who can do the water and the roads and all that. And really, there's nothing keeping them from applying out, because this would be scary if it was your job. So what we came up with was, we'd like to discuss the possibility of a 6-month severance package to try to stop any immediate applying out, kind of just stall it. And one of the things we thought of during that meeting was, it only applies to full-time employees. It wouldn't apply to the disability. Bill has to certify and maintain that the finances are there before it would be part of it. We would modify the employee handbook to state this. We would redo an ordinance, and then, so that was one of the ordinances you'll see tonight. And then the other thing, if it starts 10 days after their last day to service or after the dissolve, depending on which one came first, because some people will be critical if there would be a dissolve, right?
Would that not be vote to dissolve?
Yeah, if they voted to dissolve and it got certified. One thing that did come up was that for the police, usually it's a 6-month apply-out process, so they didn't really think that would necessarily stave them off, but this is the compromise that we have. A year is a lot of money to reserve. We wanted to get as much bang for our buck, basically. But honestly, we spent $0. The only way any money gets spent is if the community itself decides to spend it. If you vote to dissolve or put a dissolve on the ballot and it happens, you spent how much money, Bill?
265,000.
$265,000. That is your choice as a resident. That is not my choice, but my choice is to try to make sure that the electric stays on, the water keeps flowing, the streets keep getting paved and cleaned, and that the police are here to protect you. So that was my job, and that's why it's here on council tonight. And I think we had our next meeting, we were just going to play it by ear for now, so. And the other topic we did have was the handbook amendment to allow the Bethel Police to have their own Facebook page and regularly update what they are allowed to update with. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Communication Commission, we have not selected a chair for that one yet because we had a couple absences and we want to make sure we had full board there in order to do that, to make sure we were able to do that. So I'll go ahead and speak on that. So we did not decide on a logo just yet because the logos that came in were neat or creative, but they wasn't something that we could take and put into, you know, a GIF or whatever you want to call it, you know, and then just use it. It was something that would have to be more design on top of it. So we asked for finished logos, not sketches of ideas. So Leah Fields is taking care of that, and then we spoke of starting to communicate more with the entities about economic development. I mean, we've been doing a lot of work lately, just as a community, as, you know, businesses, as churches, as the council, myself, the BBA. So the last thing that we want to do is throw in another meeting right away, you know, for another commission or anything. So we're going to lightly start talking about economic development in that communication board. And if it gets to the point to where those meetings are getting longer, we need to expand it, you know, more people are interested, then we might talk about that later in the future down the road, of coming up with a different way of approaching that. But right now, we're going to keep it in that communication commission. There was, we discussed with everybody about the fireworks on May 16th. We have a lot of, this is going to be great. I mean, this May 16th, I can't wait for it. It's like Christmas. So I believe it's, 15 years or so since we have fireworks here? I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah,
The bicentennial.
Yeah, so Mr. Frondorf of the National Honor Society, he has done an awesome job. I mean, he raised over $4,000, I think, so far, and then the Burke Trust matched him. So originally it was a $3,000 minimum to have an 8 to 10 minute show or something like that. So now we're going to have like a 17 to 20 minute show because we've got $8,000 worth of fireworks that's going to be shot off. So it's going to be pretty cool. And then Mr. Coogan has done a good job with getting the bands together for the concert that starts at noon. And then when all that ends at 8 o'clock, you know, we hopefully the regatta that's in town will come down. You know, after the alumni dinner, those people will come. We got the Knights of Columbus coming down. We've got, you know, we're starting to get a little bit of a run on some sponsorships for some vendor booths and stuff like that. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to be great. You know, I plan on be there all day long. So, I mean, our next meeting for the Communications Commission would be, well, I wrote down the time, I didn't write down the date. The 31st, I believe. Yeah, so we'll be here on March 31st at 6:30 for that. And we do welcome the township, and we welcome the fire department and anyone else to come in. It's an open public meeting, so, and we'll just keep going with it, so. And so that's all I have for that.
If council members and everyone could refresh and then rejoin the meeting, I did add the 2 pieces of legislation.
Okay. All right. Just 1 minute, please. Feel like I'm on the telephone. All right, so next we are going to go into call of members. And first up would be Ms. Shepherd.
The only thing I'd like to speak on is the coronavirus, which is running 24/7 on all of the news networks. Please don't panic, people. Practice good common sense. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. As I mentioned before the meeting, that was my grandmother's mantra, who was born in 1896 when people just got sick and died for no apparent reason. So just wash your hands. Try to be safe. That's it.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Hollifield.
Just not much. Apologize for my absence at Personnel Committee meeting. I'm so sorry. You did not want me here. I have not been that sick in so long. To back up, I'm not that kind of sick. I do not have coronavirus. Just to continue to stay healthy, like Lucy mentioned. Happy Easter, because I'm thinking that that's coming up soon. I'm curious if the village is going to have to postpone, or obviously not postpone, but forego Holy Week and things of that nature. I know they're talking about postponing Praise Unchained, which was kicked off on Palm Sunday. So just, spring's around the corner, everybody stay healthy. Hopefully we get through this coronavirus unscathed. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And next will be Ms. Ross.
I don't have anything this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dunn.
I have nothing right now. Thank you.
And Ms. Brown.
I apologize to those in the audience if you can't hear me. I'm wearing a mask, but that's one of the stipulations with cancer. You protect yourself against all the coronas out there. The other thing I wanted to say is it's sad news, but we're losing Fitzgerald. So if you are actually using their pharmacy here, you'll have to mitigate that over to the Williamsburg location will still be open. The other thing is we had the soft opening for the dairy bar. I took Mom, stayed in the car, let her go out in public, and she really enjoyed the Sunday. So this weekend on Saturday, you go out there to their grand opening, you can win prizes. I hear there might even be toilet paper rolls given away. So if you're like me and you don't stockpile all that stuff and you don't want to spend $700 to the scammers out there for a roll of toilet paper, you might want to enter. The other thing that I have is that I really don't believe that our village wants to dissolve, but we do have to. We do have to kind of mitigate that risk, even though I feel like most people are happy with the governance here. They know they can reach out to people. The day that I got diagnosed with cancer, I talked to somebody till 2 a.m. about her concerns. And then when I was just too sick to, I referred her on to Jay. The mayor is always willing to also take care of people. So that's the thing with going to a larger scale of government, which scales back your control. At a village level, you can tell your village people who are your neighbors, your concerns, and a lot of times they make stuff happen. The guy who had a criminal record didn't get to knock on your door because a village resident reached out to me and I said, hey, do we have any kind of protection for solicitation? That's just how smaller government enables you to be a voice that's actually heard and actually can make change. And you can serve on committees and different things to help control what happens in your community. You can bring the growth, but you can bring the smart growth instead of just, willy-nilly, and you don't want to be that big city, or, you don't want strip clubs or whatever else. And that's all I have, but thank you for praying for me and continue to do so, because I know that the Lord is healing me.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank people. And they keep sending
Mr.
me
Coogan.
I just want to let everybody know that the Historical Society's fundraising dinner has been postponed until this event is over. And their dedication is also postponed. I've already bought stock in both of them, so. Legendary Ice Cream opens up this weekend. They're going to have giveaways, so I highly encourage everybody to go down there and possibly win a bike. Yeah, they've got a good thing going there, and their product's great, and the service is super. You've got great people down there. Anyways, I also want to take a moment and thank all of our sponsors for their cash donations for this event. Our mayor has even donated some money to this, Mr. Noble, and our village solicitor donated a good amount of money, and we'll be putting them on the banner and making it look good. Richard's Oils was my first big sponsor, and Mark there was super. He freely gave away the money, and people know Mark. They say he doesn't give away money easy. Anyways, I have a few booths already set up, and I'm only taking a certain number of booths. So if anybody out in the village is still interested in doing this, I highly encourage you to get the checks to me as soon as possible. I'm reachable online. Under Facebook, under Brian Coogan, BryanCoogan. It has a picture of me with long hair from way back when. So, and anyways, I've got it there, and just hit me up there under private messaging. I will return your message ASAP. And the cost for each booth is $25, and that's going to the entertainment. And so far as at this point in time, I've collected 3 checks from vendors. I've got probably about a dozen people interested, but you know, money talks, as they say. So, and this evening, I understand Faith Chapel Ministries was going to donate a nice hefty check for one of the bands for the July 11th event, and I'm very, very appreciative of that. They've got very good entertainment for that event, and 3-Piece Revival is, they've got a great following, and I hear they're going to be playing over in Mount Orab as well, so I'm really stoked over this. It's a really good event, so. Yeah, they're bringing their own sound, so this is going to be a different type of a thing for me. We usually go with the sound guy. This time, we're having the bands bring their sound, so it's going to hopefully bring the cost of this down a little bit and give me a new outlook on this, in a different direction to push into, so that way I can defray the cost a bit. So, anyways, that's all I have. I'm looking forward to the event.
All right, thank you, Mr. Coogan. And at this point now, we're going to go into legislation. And I don't have my stuff here, so I'm going to do my best with it. So we have ordinance 1934. It's an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the Village of Bethel, the State of Ohio, during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020. And on this one, I believe I need a motion to waive the 3.
I'll make a motion, we waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 1934.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. So Ms. Shepherd and Ms. Brown, whenever you're ready, Mr. Gilpin.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
No.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now to adopt 1934, ordinance 1934.
I make a motion, we adopt ordinance 1934.
I'll second.
All right, so Ms. Shepherd and Mr. Dunn. And is it discussion now or after?
Discussion.
Okay, so any discussion on this ordinance?
I would like to speak to the importance of this ordinance that we have. Amelia's dissolving has probably gone fairly well, considering there was no criteria or any previous way to dissolve a village that had the monies or funding. They were still solvent, basically. And Bethel is a solvent village. But the importance of this ordinance is to retain employees if an initiative goes to the ballot. I'm not saying this right, probably. The initial initiative to put it on the ballot for vote.
Couple things, I just want to make sure we're
Okay.
really clear on what we're
Yes, that's
voting on.
what I
We're
want to
voting
be clear
We're
on.
voting on the appropriation ordinance.
Right.
And the village is required by law to pass an appropriation ordinance by the end of March. And Bill has to get it up. So it's a critical, we can't spend any money past March 31st if an appropriation ordinance is not passed. I don't think there's any dispute that council needs to pass the appropriation ordinance.
Okay.
My understanding is there's dispute over a line item in the appropriation ordinance, which is the item that would fund a severance package in the event that a petition was filed, voted on, and certified.
Yes. Yes.
So
We have to have the monies available in the appropriations in order for that
Correct.
to go
And
forward.
once a petition is filed, the village is not able to take on any additional contractual obligations.
Such as
So it-
hiring employees to replace other ones.
Well, no, we can hire employees, but we cannot contractually obligate ourselves to provide any assurances to them in the event
Right.
that they were to very
Right.
suddenly lose their job.
Right, okay.
So the differences between the 2020 temporary and the 2020 permanent are this $265,000 in the different line items that Mr. Gilpin spoke to. So just example would be the general government, other expenses went up $50,000. I just
No.
kind of went through and added a little bit, and it should equal this 265.
No, because part of what we addressed in last week's conversation, the 50,000 was for grant match for the street projects and, what was the second item? Travis? Oh, restrooms in the park.
Restrooms.
So only the personal services lines were changed today, and a little, just a tiny little bit, Medicare's 1.45%. So those, the fringe benefit lines were tweaked by whatever was necessary to add that difference in the 1.45%. What you're looking at farther down under the capital outlay line, that was discussed last week as a need before we made them permanent, now that we know what grants, projects are actually coming in this year. Those figures were not in the temporaries that were approved in December.
Okay, so Mayor's Court went from a 0 temporary to 100,000
Yes.
on the permanent.
Yes,
Can you
because that
speak to
fund
that?
wasn't open in December when we did the temporaries.
Okay. And that,
It's a new fund.
that's the new fund that they made us do separately, breaking it out.
That
Okay.
fund did not exist when we did the temporaries.
Okay.
And if I may, I know that's, from my understanding, the appropriations, we can put whatever number in there, so to speak. It just allows him to go up to that number. He can always decrease it. So if the legislation later on gets failed, he can decrease it. But if we didn't have it in there now, and we approve the other legislation, then we have to go back and do it again and have another,
No, I would say we can't even have the other,
he can't raise it on his own. The council has to
But you
raise.
can't raise it after March 31st, correct? So it
You
needs to be in
could, you
there
could
now.
always amend appropriation ordinances as the year goes by.
Okay.
But if we
Right,
don't,
if new obligations come up that were, but the goal is to try and forecast what your needs are going to be in the various funds.
And we've also forecasted the possibility of next week, the whole dissolution being put on the ballot, because after that happens, we can't contractually amend anything for the severance packages.
That's correct.
Okay.
and on this, if we don't approve this, like if it failed, I think, don't we have to have another meeting, council meeting for a new,
well, we have to have
Appropriations.
our appropriations have to be permanent by a certain date. Is that correct, Bill?
By March 31st, that we made permanent.
Okay, so yes, we
But
would
it-
have to have another meeting
Meeting,
within
so.
2 weeks to try to get those passed.
This is probably a little confusing because the way the numbers fell, 1934 versus 1935. The reality is, we can't, we couldn't address ordinance 1935 unless these figures are in place
Unless
first.
34 passes.
But it really doesn't have anything to do with that ordinance. If the ordinance 1935 doesn't pass, then the idea of those other numbers being increased is a moot point.
Right.
That's all I got.
All right, everybody good?
I'm done.
Mr. Gilpin, when you are ready.
Okay. Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right. And then, that's it on that one, or we have to?
No, there's no emergency clause on the appropriation ordinance.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so moving on to ordinance number 1935. This is a ordinance amending the Village of Bethel personnel policy, authorizing the execution of employment contracts with full-time village employees, and authorizing an addendum to the employment contract of the village administrator and declaring it an emergency. So I'm looking to waive the 3 on these, on ordinance 1935.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 on ordinance 1935.
I'll second that.
I heard Ms. Shepherd first, sorry. All right, so Ms. Brown,
Yours on that side.
and then Ms. Shepherd, and Mr. Gilpin.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
No.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Okay, and then now I'm looking for a motion to adopt 1935.
I move we adopt ordinance 1935.
I second that.
Okay, Ms. Shepherd and Mr. Coogan, and is there any discussion on this one?
I would like for Emily to go through it, because I think she explained it to us in personnel really well, on who it applies to, who it doesn't apply to, what would stop somebody who's employed today but quits tomorrow, those kind of things.
Well, obviously, the goal of this is to provide some assurances to the village's employees and to maintain a full and productive workforce. Today, tomorrow, regardless of what happens in the future. What this ordinance would do is it would create an amendment in the personnel policy that would vest in all full-time employees a severance package in the event of a dissolution. It would be a 6-month package that would go into effect within 10 days after a effective dissolution is certified by the Board of Elections, or that employee's last day of work following a certification, whichever is later. And that's because obviously we have utility workers who would likely be required to continue to work until the utility is transferred to a new utility. That personnel policy authorizes employment contracts with all those employees, as well as an addendum to the village administrator's contracts, so that they are all similar. And anytime a new employee comes on, they would sign an employment contract as part of their onboarding. In the event that a petition for dissolution were filed, we would no longer execute any additional employment contracts, because we would be prohibited by state law from doing that. And in order to be eligible for the severance package, the employee has to remain employed as a full-time employee in active pay status through the certification of the vote. Obviously, if there's no petition filed, this never goes
It will
into
never be
effect. It
activated.
will never be activated. And if a vote is unsuccessful, there is no obligations on the part of the village.
I would like to say something, if you wouldn't mind.
Go ahead.
This is a tough decision. You know, we've seen this happen down in Amelia. And this is my concern, and this is my job to give council the ability and also the, to know options out there, and also give them the insight that I see that maybe they don't or they do, and they just, we have differences of opinions or whatever. But my insight on this is, if a committee is set for a petition, and they go down and they have it checked, and then they start running a petition, and they start gathering signatures, just that action alone may make our one lineman we have for the electric company start looking for a job. We've already got a few police officers that are a little apprehensive because they put their life into this town, and they protect us, and they'll get in front of a bullet for us, and we're going to stand back and let them sweat this out for 6 months, or however long it takes for the vote to get here. And that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is the actual residents themselves. If we lose a police officer, or we lose a lineman, or we lose someone in the utility department, I've been in business for a long time, and it is very hard to find employees of good caliber anyway, much less if they know that you're in turmoil and you're not going to possibly be operating again. So why would someone make a life-changing career and leave Duke Energy to come here as a lineman for 6 months and then get thrown out the window? So to me, this is a safety net for the community, because what's going to happen is, if that petition is starting to circulate, our services drop. Our people are, like Janessa said, they're the nicest people in the world, but you can hear the bad day they're having through their voice, and the service isn't at the quality it should be. Then people may change their minds and say, well, maybe Bethel isn't worth keeping because they can't keep up with stuff. And it might change some people's votes, but they really love the town and they don't want to see it go nowhere, but we lost our control. And if we can't keep control of everything that's going on here, then, we're in a proactive mode right now to do that. Once this petition gets done, we are locked down. We cannot do anything. We might as well not even have council meetings, to be honest with you. So this is the way I look at it. I talked to Bill Gilpin privately a few minutes ago after a finance committee meeting. If people was worried about money, and people's worried about this taken out of their income tax money, $9,000 is what comes out of the general fund. That's where the income tax money goes into. If this dissolve happens, $9,000 is what comes out of that severance package out of the general fund. Maybe some change, or might not be exact that number. The rest of them come out of the already the money that we have in there already. We have a 180-day reserve in the police department. That's approximately $175,000. The day the vote gets certified on a yes, I'm not sure what day that'll be, November 25th, November 26th, the police department gets stripped of their powers immediately. They are done. They're security guards. So there's $175,000 in their fund, because that's our 180-day severance, or 180-day reserve. $127,000 of the severance package is what gets paid out. That comes out of the police fund. It don't come out of the income tax at all. It don't come out of the general fund. It just comes out of their surplus that they have. Same way with the utilities, same way with the water and the electric. All those employees get paid out of their own fund that's already got a surplus in it for, the reserve. Only $9,000 comes out of the general fund. So, and like Janessa said, in personnel, this measure is costing us absolutely $0 right now. It ain't gonna cost us nothing. So if someone or the whole community feels that Bethel isn't worth it to stay alive, they should at least have the decency to pay these people 6 months so they can go find another job, because they put their life on the line. They come out at 2 a.m. and work for 5 hours in the middle of a snowstorm. They put the electric back on. I'm telling you that it's got to, if it, I just, that's all I got to say about it. So, if anyone else has anything, then go ahead. So.
I'm sure everyone wants to hear from me, so I'll just go ahead and speak. How many other villages in the state of Ohio have a severance package like this? Emily, do you know?
I have no idea.
I mean, because that's a question I would like to know, because I knew someone would say this is being proactive, and I get that side of the argument, because I'm a grown-up and I see how an argument works. Everybody has two sides. I see this as reactive. I see this as us reacting to a situation that occurred, and I see this as us reacting to something that's occurring out in Facebook land about someone who may or may not want to try to dissolve our village. I have more faith in our people in this village not to do that than have to worry about passing a severance package. I would like to also know how many other government employees have a severance package that are in positions like this as well. I think that the fact that this happened in personnel last week, which I listened to on March 4th, and now we're voting on it tonight on an emergency, I feel like I would like some more time to digest it. I'm not 100% okay with it. Not on a personal level, as I know everyone's going to take it personal, but I feel that we are running a business as well. I mean, our job is to run this government. And I work for government, so I understand how government works. I totally get it, but I feel like I need some more time personally to digest it. And I seem like I might be the only one, and that's completely fine.
Time is not on our side.
Well, unfortunately, it's how I feel. So.
Which I don't disagree with you, I mean, but it is one of those things, because it's kind of proactive and reactive.
It is, and I see both sides of it.
I agree with you.
I see both sides of it, and it's just, I feel like, without me listening to personnel, I wouldn't have known the background of it. I listen to the committee meetings, I'm hopeful everybody does, just to stay on top of what's going on on the committees that I'm not a part of, and it just doesn't sit well with me. And, maybe it will. I don't know the answer to that. I would like to know more about how many other villages in the state of Ohio, how many other units of government offer severance packages to government employees. Like, has it turned out well in the past? Is it going to turn out well in the future? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I'm not aware of any other villages in the state of Ohio that have a bullseye on their back.
Well, I'm sure they...
Except for the ones in Claremont County.
Well, and I know that most feel like we do. I feel like sometimes we put it there ourselves. I feel like we're so concerned about everyone else. As someone who has attended these meetings since 2015, I feel like the air of the meetings, the people that come, the people that interact, the people have changed, as council members have changed. I feel like everything is more positive than it was when I came in and everyone first started arguing about the income tax, because that was when I got interested in local government. And I feel like it's a whole different relationship between council and the people in the village.
If I can ask a question. It costs us nothing.
No, I understand.
To do this. And this is kind of clarification on my own part.
Hopefully we'll never have
Correct,
to
yeah,
use
exactly. We'll never use
ordinance
this.
1935.
The benefits to me in telling our employees they're valued, that cost us nothing up front, and it actually would cost the people who decide they don't want to exist. To me, that's the impression I get, is that,
No, and I understand why this is so important to everyone, but it's more of a principle for me. It's like, why are we deciding that our village is so special? Why is it something when we are special, but is this something other people are doing? Is this the right thing to do, to offer them that, especially when,
It's not, it is so, it just doesn't happen. A village that has their books in order, that has money, they're not supposed to dissolve. But unfortunately, the laws, as they currently exist in the state of Ohio, it only takes one person to undo that entire thing until it goes to a formal vote in November. I doubt that the people in the village of Amelia thought that this would happen.
But when you look back on it, if you want to bring up the Village of Amelia, which I think is why we're doing this, is that the mayor and the council is majority of the reason why they ended up, in a lot of opinion, where they are now.
But was it appropriate to, well, we don't even need to be discussing whether or not it's appropriate
exactly.
for Amelia or anything like that. But what, the purpose, I think, of this ordinance is to not let happen what did happen in Amelia. We need to protect our employees, and hopefully, they'll stay with us. If anything happens, they'll stay with us for the 6 months until the people of the Village of Bethel say, we want to stay a village.
Reactive or proactive? I hear you on both sides. My question is, to all of us, do we feel that if our village dissolves, we owe our employees 6 months of pay? Maybe that's more the question, rather than proactive, reactive, Amelia, whatever. Do we feel that we owe our employees that 6 months of pay?
As a government, we're not a private business.
Right.
We are a government entity. They're also going to get unemployment. I'm on the understanding of that as well.
It's available.
I think it does show on one level the amount of concern and care that we as a council have for this village, on both cases, from Stephanie's standpoint, but also from the standpoint of this ordinance, that the people can see that, it's not that we're trying to put a wedge in anything, that we are trying our best to, for lack of a better term, put our best foot forward here. I know there's not a person on this council that wants to see this village happen, and we want to see this procedure take place. And I think that anything that we can do, particularly that it doesn't cost us any money, that's a piece that I think will resonate with folks. I don't think this will be seen as a negative by the supporters of this village. I hope it's seen as a negative by those who don't support this village, right? Because it shows our resolve on one level.
See, I don't look at it
It
as...
keeps us together until Election Day in November. It keeps the status quo of the village so that we can give all the people of the village the police protection, their
I think
utilities.
the fact that we can have this
everything.
discussion as village council, without screaming and tearing your hair. And,
Absolutely.
throwing of books or anything like that, speaks a lot.
And see, my view is a little different than yours. I'm not looking at it just from an employee standpoint. Like, it's nice that you could offer an employee something if you're going to fire an employee, because that's essentially what happens when a village dissolves, is people who've never met your employees fire them. But what I look at is, if I was the employee and I know my job may be up in 6 months, I look at it from that standpoint, and the standpoint is, I'm going to bail, right? I'm going to go to some place that I can feed my family with, and I can't expect that they would do any less. I know at least about 4 employees have reached out about this, and they are scared. They have mortgages, they have kids, they have wives, they have bills to pay, they have medical, they lose their medical, they lose their dental, they lose their vision, they have to pick that up too. While unemployment's there, probably that unemployment check would go to pay for individual health insurance for a family if they're the sole breadwinner. And what I look at is, what do I owe this village? Do I owe the village a little assurance that for 6 months they got a smooth sailing ride as possible that I can provide them, that they can get the services that they're used to, that the potholes aren't going to swallow them up, that the snow isn't going to not be plowed? And I owe that to them because they put me in this chair to make that decision. Now, is it nice that it benefits the employees too? Yes, I won't lie, it is nice, because I would love if my company would do it, But I'm not looking just at them. I'm looking at, there's 4 that are afraid. You lose 4 employees, they say the turnover rate for training is 75%. And we haven't even got a petition on the thing. but it's just natural. Fear takes over when you think there's a possibility you're going to lose your job.
I think by protecting our employees, we are also protecting our village.
We are.
Because we are making sure that those services.
That they stay.
And yes, it's like, hey, here's 6 months worth of pay, just in case. But it's just a way maybe to solidify to the village residents that yes, the council is taking actions to make sure that our village runs appropriately. Those employees are benefiting from that if something happens, but we're taking that step to make sure that our village is taken care of in the case that this does happen. So, but I do see every point that you're bringing up, I really do.
I agree, and it is a pinch your nose kind of vote. It really
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's not easy. It's not fun. We shouldn't even be having this talk because it's not even people from inside our village that spurred this conversation. It's not even a person who lives in a village or has a business in a village. It's just some random guy in Union Township who, is running a campaign at $100,000. That's money. If we all had $100,000 sitting in our bank account that we could blow, I'm sure we wouldn't even be having this conversation, but.
I think it's worth repeating what you said earlier, though, Janessa, that we're not deciding as a council to spend $265,000. And at the end of the day, I think that makes it sit easier for me, is that if we do end up having to pay out the severance out of the village's money, we didn't do this. We did not vote for that petition to go on. We did not vote for the village to dissolve. We are doing the best thing we can do to preserve our village. This $265,000 will be paid out by those voters that decide that the dissolve is what they want.
That's right.
So I think you said it best, Janessa, and I just wanted to reiterate, giving you full credit, because you said it perfectly.
I needed the air quotes.
You needed the air quotes. Janessa said.
For comparison, for something outside of government, if two scenarios, if a factory announces to its employees, at the end of the day today, the factory's closing. Those employees, there's no severance package. But if a factory announces in 6 months from now, we're moving operations to another city, we're downsizing this plant, but if you stay for the next 6 months, this is the incentive. You're going to get an incentive to stay, otherwise the employees would leave. I think this is just a way to bridge that gap. If the village was just closing operations and the employees found out then, there wouldn't be a reason for a severance, but.
That's also true in the restaurant industry.
Yeah,
You ever
any
wonder
industry.
how the restaurants open on Saturday and Sunday they're padlocked? Do you think that they would be open on Saturday if they told the employees on Monday there's going to be no restaurant? No, they're immediately go get another server, cooks or waitress job immediately.
So I got one last thing, and this is real high level, and it's more future looking out, and that's where I try to put my place in being the mayor, of looking ahead, looking at what could happen, what couldn't happen, and using the facts that I have. Right now, I know that we have a little over 60% of this village that are renters that come in and out. And I also know that on the last election, we had a little over 300 voters vote. And we got 2,700 people out there. So we got about 2,400 people out there. How many of those can you guarantee would be a majority vote to keep the village? And I can tell you right now, from investigating and from watching the newspaper articles and the Facebook and all of that, when the initiative to run a petition in every single village in this county happens, it's coming full force. It's not going to be just knocking on people's door just saying, oh, I just was testing the waters. It's going to be sitting at CVS, it's going to be sitting at Speedway with big tents up, with big signs up that says, come and register. That way your voice is heard. So now we've got an extra, and this is a presidential election coming up too. So we're going to triple our voters coming out. Most of them are going to be new, maybe not even voted before in their life. And if something happens and they don't have all of the knowledge that we have that makes us feel like this town is home and we're doing what we need to do, there's a pretty good chance that we're going to get called to work here pretty soon. I know some of the churches and some of the BDA and all those people are ready to fight. we're ready to go out, and we're ready to round up everybody, but if something happens and there's a glitch, and it takes one vote, and if it's 50-50, it only takes one vote.
This is why I mentioned at the last town hall meeting that we'll have a door-to-door operation put together.
Right, so I mean, and with that being, looking at it like
This
that.
component here this is a component of.
Right, this is a component to keep these guys in place, keep our village strong throughout the whole process. So, and that's pretty much all I got to say. If anyone else has anything else, then we can move forward. All right, Mr. Gopin, when you're ready.
Okay. Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
No.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now we're going to move on to, I'm sorry, so now we need to pass this ordinance 1935 as an emergency, please. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Ms. Shepherd and Ms. Hollifield. Mr. Gopin, when you're ready.
Just a moment here. Okay. Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
No.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, okay. And then now we're moving on to ordinance 1936. This is a first reading. Ordinance amending the Village of Bethel personnel policy.
That's the first reading.
Okay, and then we have a resolution, 1043, resolution declaring intent to conduct internet auctions for the sale of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit village personal property. So this here, I need to waive the 3 on it.
I make a motion, we waive the 3 on resolution 1043.
Okay, and a second.
I'll second it.
Is that Ms. Shepherd?
No, it's me.
Oh, Ms. Hallfield, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, so, Mr. Gopin, when you're ready.
I just want to tell everybody, I wasn't, on this part of the software, I was not able to leave the meeting and come back in, so I'm writing it down the old-fashioned way. Okay?
Okay.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, now to adopt resolution 1043.
I move we adopt resolution 1043.
I second that.
All right, so Ms. Shepherd and Mr. Coogan, is there any discussion on this?
This is like vehicles and things like that that have outlived their use in the village that we would auction off that were at what value?
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on what this is a little bit. In order for us to, under the Ohio Revised Code, there's a method for getting rid of surplus or obsolete or old property. It typically requires you to put it in a paper, take the lowest and best bid. As we've moved towards using kind of gov deals and other internet auctions to get rid of things, which is much more convenient and efficient, the Ohio Revised Code requires us to pass an annual resolution that authorizes us to go the internet auction route as opposed to the traditional putting it in the paper route. So we have to actually pass this on an annual basis. So we're going to kind of work that into with the other resolutions that we do annually to make sure that we always have it in place. But the impetus of it was that the chief wanted to sell the Interceptor on gov deals. So we'll pass this one first, and then there's one after this that authorizes the sale of the Interceptor.
Okay.
I have, go ahead.
You said the lowest and best bid, accept?
I'm sorry, highest and best bid.
I thought you might have spoken.
I was like, wow, we're doing deals.
We're getting a dollar from somebody.
There is in section 1 of this, it says the Village of Moscow versus the Village of Bethel, so I don't know if that affects, I mean, that can be a typo fixed.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, everybody good? All right, so Ms. Shepherd Did the motion, Mr. Coogan did the second. Mr. Gopin, when you're ready.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Holifield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And then we move on to Resolution 1044, resolution authorizing the sale of a 2013 Ford Interceptor that is no longer needed for municipal purposes by internet auction. So I'm looking for a waive the three.
So moved.
I'll second that.
You guys are throwing your voice. All right, so Ms. Holifield and Ms. Shepherd. All right, Mr. Gopin.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Holifield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now I'm looking to adopt Resolution 1044.
Move to adopt Resolution 1044.
I second that.
All right, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Coogan, any more discussion on this one? Mr. Gopin, when you're ready.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Holifield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, approval of expenses. Looking for a motion to approve the expenses.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Ms. Shepherd and Ms. Brown. Mr. Gilpin.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Holifield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
And payment of the bills.
I move we pay the bills.
And I will go ahead.
I second that.
I'm sorry.
I had Ron over here second.
I heard him too, so Ms. Holifield
It ain't
did the first and Mr. Dunn did the second on that one. Mr. Gilpin, when you're ready.
We get little gold stars by our name for most of
You do, you win a prize at the end of the year.
Okay, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Holifield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, and then
You got
we
executive.
need to go into executive session for the following, 121.22G1 to discuss the appointment of public officials to the next tax review board. So I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session.
Make a motion to go into executive session.
I second that.
All right, so Ms. Brown and Mr. Coogan. Mr. Gilpin.
Okay. Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Holifield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, we are going into executive session now, so when we come back from executive session, we will be just adjourning, so.
We'll make the appointments.
Oh, no, we'll be making the appointments after the executive session, I'm sorry.
What's that?
Yeah, I guess.
I think it's all
Are we off
open.
there?
It might be a question about nuance. So you are referring to you often refer to the legislation as a severance package. But isn't it that the employees would be working somewhat through that 6-month term?
No, the 6 months would be post a certification.
Okay, and then they would discontinue working,
Right.
there would be no working.
No work.
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if the utilities stay
The utility
on,
said the utility will stay on, so does that?
so they keep their job, they get no severance until they are let go after everything is dissolved.
Contract sort of extension.
Yeah.
No, once they are done working, at that point in time, they would be entitled to a 6-month severance.
Because all that's up to the auditors and all that to figure out once a dissolve comes on into play, but we have the unique situation of utilities where you can't shut people's power and water off just because a handful of people voted to dissolve a.
Here we go again.
The utility workers, they would be continuing work when their work discontinues, even though it might run past the certification, then they would receive a 6-month severance package.
Everything has to wind down. There's no protocol
Okay.
for winding down a village that has utilities. Am I
So-
correct, Mr. Gilpin?
It takes a while.
Well, and that's where I think I'm sort of coming from with my questions, because I'm seeing that there are some key staff that have stayed on in Amelia.
It would be after,
Chief,
it would
after.
either 10 days after certification, they would be entitled to it, or 10 days after their last day of employment, whichever is later.
6 months after their last day of employment.
6 months has nothing to do with
Oh, okay.
it. That's just the amount of money.
They're getting 6 months.
They're getting 6 months pay, and that they'll get that either 10 days after certification or 10 days after their last
Okay.
day of pay. Sorry, I
Okay,
missed.
no, and my experience is working against me here. Okay, great, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Feel free to reach out to me if you need anything.
The ordinance. Document, which is probably online, and then I'll be asking for a breakdown of the staff and the amount of budgeted.
It's sanitized.
Okay, thank you.
I just got sanitized.
All right, we're coming out of executive session. Mr. Gilpin, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Kuchar?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And we are going to do our member selection for the local Board of Tax Review. And I'll go ahead and start with mine. My appointment for my member is going to be Derek Shane Wilson. And then I look for a motion for the other two appointments from council.
I move we select Josh Mattis as a member of the Tax Review Board.
Move that we select.
We gotta vote on that one.
Oh, each
We
one.
have to vote each of them
Well, we could
separately.
do them as one motion, but since you only mentioned one person in your
That's it.
motion.
Okay.
Okay,
Need a
so
second.
I'll second that.
So the motion was for Josh
Josh.
Mattis?
Yes.
all right, so Ms. Shepherd did the motion, Ms. Brown did the second. So, any discussion? Mr. Gilpin, when you're ready.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Kuchar?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And one more member left, so I'm looking for a motion for recommendation.
Make a motion that we accept Gabe Rollins as a member.
Second.
All right, so Ms. Brown and Mr. Don for the second. Any discussion? Mr. Gilpin, when you're ready.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Ms. Hallfield?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Kuchar?
Yes.
All right, and thank you guys for that. And now I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Oh, sorry, second. Give it to Janessa.
You got the words
All
right.
right, Ms. Shepherd and Ms. Brown,
Unanimous?
all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
What did you?
I have a question. Coronavirus.
Yes.
If we have